The camera moves through the dark tunnels of the dungeons below the Colostle and the Roomlands above, as it catches up with Sybil, flanked by her two rookling companions recently rescued in her exploration of the Cistern, a major labyrinth. Despite her best efforts, Sybil is spending far too much of her time breaking the two rooklings up from messing with one another. The electric rookling sends discharge energy to zap the ice rookling, who returns the favor by creating an ice sheet beneath the electric rookling's feet, causing it to fall and slide along the floor. Alright, come on, stop it. Remember, I don't need to be helping you two find a way out of here. If you're coming with me, you follow my rules, Sybil snaps at the two. You, no more zapping. Save that for something down here that wants to hurt us, do you understand me? And you, I almost slipped and fell in one of your little pranks. You need to learn to control yourself. Oh, don't give me those looks. I'm not falling for them. And no, I'm not going to give you both names, because that would mean I've developed an attachment to you, which I definitely have not. You two are still walking scraps for my arm in my eyes, so do not test me. Just then, the trio emerge out of the drainage pipes and tunnels that the Cistern outlets to the larger ecosystem of the dungeons proper, and it is massive. It is breathtaking. Enormous pillars hold up domed sections of cave and ceiling. Somehow, the dungeons are not just natural caves and underground rivers below the Roomlands. They were carved out. This is designed. Who did this? When did they do this? Questions swirl through Sybil's mind, but she doesn't have time to think about them before she sees the two rooklings nudging one another at the top of a set of stairs. Ugh, break it up, both of you, behind me. She looks around, surveying the area, trying to find where she might be able to find her way to, or what she can see if there's any places of interest to make their way towards. And she shrugs and says, Alright, well, there's nowhere to go but down, it seems. But let's see if we can't find a way back topside. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Colossal Dungeons. It is officially October, which is spooky month, and if you've ever listened to me or the DMs After Dark, October means Halloween, and that means spooky one-shots. So I'm going to do my best to, in addition to the normal episodes that come out this month on Tuesdays for the Rene Plays Games podcast, I want to put up at least 2, maybe 3 Halloween or spooky one-shots in addition to the normal schedule. We'll see what happens. I'm going to have one on this first week, which is going to be a one-shot I recently played with my friends, the DMs After Dark, on their Twitch stream. We played the one-page RPG by Grant Howitt, The Witch is Dead. We dedicated it in honor of the recently passed Jane Goodall, R.I.P. And yeah, it goes about as you'd expect. You are playing the familiars of a witch, going out for revenge against the witch hunter who killed her. So, great time. There is going to be a one-shot with my wife and I. We are following up our Valentine's one-shot of Starcrossed with an idea that we came up with at the end of that episode, which is we're going to play Starcrossed as a house and the ghost that haunts it. So that should be pretty fun. We'll see how that goes, and I may be able to squeeze one more in. I have the game. We'll see if I can get the players to sit down and find recording time. Other than that, this month's Perspective Checks is coming next week, and it is with Kate the Great Cosplays, all about the intersection of TTRPGs and the cosplay community, and just the importance of getting into character and how different hobbies have big overlaps in the Venn diagram and can help you really think more deeply about your characters, especially if you're bringing them to the table for something like a performance, or you're just one of those people who really likes to get into the roleplay and acting aspect of these wonderful games. And the last week of the month is a toss-up. Maybe I'll do a mining media, maybe I'll do another spooky one-shot. We're gonna just play that one by ear and see what we can get done. All right, and without any further ado, let's get back to Colossal Dungeons and start exploring these dungeons properly. Okay, let's get started playing Colossal Dungeons the way it's actually intended to be played. It's kind of funny that we are in episode 3 of this series, and I am just starting to do the actual exploration of the dungeons and begin the gameplay loop in a way that it was intended to be played. Obviously, I'm taking some, artistic license with this, and the beauty of this, and I said this in the Discord on Colossal, and I'll say this anywhere, talking to people who are trying to get interested in solo role-playing games. The beauty of solo role-playing games is no one's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. If you're using a game and telling a story you want to tell, and the game is helping you create that narrative and provide unexpected things happening and, offering you a mechanism by which to overcome obstacles and find growth in your character and challenge and stuff like that, then you're doing it right. And falling directly into one of the major labyrinths at the end of episode 1, which was mostly just an introduction and all that, is, probably not how many people would intend and play the dungeons. But now we're going to dive in, slow down, and do the actual gameplay loop of Colossal and Colossal Dungeons the way that it was written. And for those of you listening, this is what regular Colossal is going to sound like, and hopefully I do it pretty well. Because now, it's funny, I did a major labyrinth before I did any actual delving of the dungeons. So let's see what the actual dungeons are all about in between all of those major labyrinths and important places. An overview, again, of basic mechanics is we are going to go back and forth between exploration phases and combat phases if those come up during our exploration phases. And basically, it doesn't say that every exploration phase is a day or what have you, especially down here in the dungeons. I don't know if there's really a way to track days. They're not going to get sunlight. They're not going to see the sun come up, the sun go down, the moon come out. You're underground. There's going to be different kinds of things down here. So this is basically going to be stretches between rests, I think, is how we will do this. But I'm just going to go ahead and do an exploration phase. Reminder that Sybil is playing the character class of the Armed, which has an exploration score of 3 and a combat score of 4. So for every exploration phase, we flip 3 cards from our deck and we refer to the tables. Now, normal Colossal has its own tables for above ground and exploring the Roomlands, but the dungeons have their own lists of things that you're going to see when you are exploring. So let's go ahead and flip 3 cards here. The 10 of clubs, the 7 of clubs, and the 8 of clubs. What a wild trio to flip there. Okay, so all 3 are black cards. There are 2 different tables for exploration in the dungeons, and they split by red and black. Red cards represent organic things like people and creatures that we will find down here in the dungeons, whereas black cards are scenic things, structures, and objects. And I flipped these in the order 10, 7, 8, but I do not have to resolve them in that manner. We're going to read all 3 and find a way to, if you're playing this not on a podcast, not just speaking stream of consciousness as I do here playing this game, you can sit down, look at these prompts, and write them into something in your journal of a way that this would have happened organically. So let's read our 3. I'll go in lowest to highest number. So the 7 of clubs says we find a gate where we can meditate and recharge our spirit. Here's another thing. The Dungeons book comes after another supplement to Colossal known as Kyodana, which is another supplement that takes the world of Colossal and gives it kind of an East Asian flair, and it adds another statistic called Spirit, which we are not using. So we find a gate. Maybe it'll be a nice thing that we can bring into the narrative side of this. The 8 is a flooded area. Now, if this was a spade, it would be still, but it is clubs, so this flooded area is writhing with life. And then the 10 says we find another labyrinth, and it's a big one. We will draw 20 cards against the chambers table to see what you discover while lost in this labyrinth. Awesome. Okay. So as Sybil and the Rooklings walk through this area of the dungeons, it's dark, but it's not completely pitch black. They quickly find that as they descend this staircase, they come to an area that has been flooded. And it appears from looking around, there is this bioluminescent lichen and other creatures in here that give light to the general massive, massive scale of this section of the dungeons. And I think that the flooded area that we come across is a canal. This is where the water from the cistern would normally be regulated and come out thanks to the valves and the rook that was up there, the wave rook and everything like that. Normal working order stuff would have caused water to come out of the cistern and provide a regular source of water through this canal. However, Sybil immediately kind of clocks that this water level seems really high, and she's looking around. It's got a bunch of the bioluminescent lichen underneath the water. She's already up to, mid-shin, knee-deep, and she's looking around going, I may have had something to do with this. That's my bad. And it said it is teeming with life, and I think that normally there are creatures that live down here. There are bats that live in the high ups and roost in the arches and things like that along the ceiling. There are fish and other animals that live in the water of this canal and the underground rivers. There are lizards that walk along the walls, probably eating this bioluminescent lichen. All kinds of animals live here. Not just that, there are people down here, presumably, but I think that this is teeming with wildlife in a way that the flooding has made certain animals that don't normally interact with one another have to interact, and I think that it kind of blocks off some places for Sybil and the rooklings to go unless they want to force their way through or anything like that, or chance an encounter with one of these creatures, which they're not going to do. So they continue to skirt around, and eventually, I think that Sybil stops at one of these gates that would normally allow somebody to sit here, meditate, and recharge their spirit. She feels something looking at the gate itself. There is an appreciation of the craftsmanship of it, and clearly there's a meaning to it that I don't know if Sybil would recognize as something powerful like that, or if she would just appreciate the craftsmanship. But while she's sitting there and she's running her hand along it, maybe she's sitting here to take a snack and take a break. She is an older woman. She does not have the stamina of a Marco or anything like that, Alice, from our first series, these young kids out on their first adventure. She is taking a breather, and I think that's when the rooklings wander off, and she has to stand up and she has to be like, oh, come on. She thinks for a second, not my problem. I could just let him go. I'm just going to let him walk away. And then maybe she hears like a bang or something like that, and she just stands up and just goes, ugh, I think they have my components. And she starts to walk over in the direction of the noise. And I'm going to flip a couple of cards based on oracles here. I think that one of the rooklings, maybe both of the rooklings, found the labyrinth, and one of them has already gone in. Let's flip a single card. Reminder for oracles in this game, if we flip a red card, it's no. If we flip a black card, it's yes. And then low cards are buts, high cards are ands. I'm going to say, did one of the rooklings already go in and get lost? That is a 10 of spades, which is a yes, and yes with a bonus. I don't know what the bonus of this would be, which would be, I think that, well, let's find out which one it is. It's gone. So I'm going to flip a card here. I'm just going to say red is the ice rookling and black is the electric rookling. That is the queen of clubs. So the electric rookling has already gone into this labyrinth. For the purposes of this labyrinth, we do not have the electric rookling accompanying us. We're probably going to have to find them. And we'll see if there's something in the labyrinth rules that we can swing to make sense of us catching up and finding them. All right, let's talk about regular labyrinths. Now, whenever you find a labyrinth in your exploration phases, you can just choose to use one of the major labyrinths from the back of this book, but because we've already done that, we're not going to do that, and I want to do a regular labyrinth and see how these rules work. So The long and short of it is that labyrinths are mini dungeons within the dungeons. When we draw a labyrinth from the exploration table, we decide if we want to enter in the first place. We're going to go save that rookling, and then we're going to flip a card from the labyrinth look table to determine what it looks like at its entrance. So let's do that real quick. A 3 of diamonds. That means that it is mechanical. There are cogs and gears. This makes sense. It's very fitting with the cistern where we just came from. This is a canal that is coming out from it. There's a lot of working contraptions and things like that, ensuring that this water is stored properly and dispersed apparently in some kind of planned way. And maybe this labyrinth is a smaller portion of a larger system here, and it's very fitting for what Sybil would be interested in anyway and wanting to go in. So that's actually a sweet score. Now we decide if we're going in. We are, and we flipped one in the exploration table that says we need to flip 20 cards to create this labyrinth. We're going to do that by placing 20 cards face down in any kind of path. Now this can be a single path with one start and one finish. It just stays going the whole way, 20 in a row, or it can snake and have branching paths off of it. Regardless, we have to choose the end of one of the paths to be where the guardian of the labyrinth is. And that's, I think, where the treasure is going to be. Let's triple check. Yes, there will be a reward specifically given if we can defeat the guardian. Otherwise, rooms are going to have items or challenges or what have you. So let's just go ahead and flip a bunch of cards here and lay them out. Okay, I've created a path with a few branches, and I've decided that the guardian is going to be sort of near the entrance actually, and the exit will be a lot further out to the back. So we'll see what we can do here. Now basically what we're going to do is we just flip cards. We start at a certain point, the end is at another point, and we're going to flip cards one by one and consult a table for labyrinth chambers that will determine what we find in them. So I guess we just start. I'm going to flip the first card, and it is the Jack of Spades. A jack in the chambers table says, Hazard Room. The walls are closing in, or a boulder is rolling towards you. You need a combat score of 1 to survive. Okay, I should probably bring this up, that multiple obstacles in the labyrinths will call on either your exploration or combat score, as I think they're just prerequisites, but let's go ahead and check the rules. So I can't find anything about the combat score noted here, but for any obstacles that will come up that mention an exploration score, we have to use our exploration score like a combat, flipping a number of cards equal to our exploration score and using them to overcome the travel obstacle, which is very clever. I kind of like that. And it does say that we don't take wounds if we fail them, because it's more like puzzles or murals or what have you. So for this one, we have a combat score of 4, so I think that we easily avoid the hazard of the, let's go with it's the rock that is hurtling towards us, a boulder here, and let's go ahead and say that for the sake of this, it was set off by our electric rookling friend who is a little ahead of us. And I think that Sybil yells out and just goes, "Stop, you're gonna trigger even more of these. We don't know how this place works. What are you doing?" And we just hear the scuffling as it continues to run on into the labyrinth. All right, let's go to the next room. That is the Ace of Clubs. An ace says a treasure chest. We get to draw an item, which is a separate table here in the labyrinth. So let's go ahead and flip there. And we get a 2 of spades, which gives us the labyrinth map. Ooh, this is actually a really good one. The labyrinth map allows us to turn all of the remaining cards in the labyrinth face side up, so we know what we are going to be up against, and it says it allows us to skip rooms that have a threat in them that we don't want to face, because our increased knowledge has allowed us to find shortcuts and secret routes. So that's really cool, and I like that. Let's flip up the rest of these cards. Obviously, as an audio medium, you're not going to be able to see them, but I'll let you know if any crazy ones come up. I'll just go in order and say them out loud. Another jack, the Jack of Clubs, a Queen of Spades, 7 of Spades, Ace of Hearts, 4 and a 2, and where the Guardian is a 5 of Clubs, so that seems maybe doable. We'll see, I'll have to check that one. a 9, an ace, 6. We're getting the full gamut here. An 8 of diamonds, 6 of hearts, king of hearts. We'll see what those big numbers mean. 2 of diamonds, 5 of hearts, and 4 of hearts to finish it out. Wow, the last 4 cards of the labyrinth are all hearts. Okay, well, now we get to look ahead and decide if we want to go through these rooms or not. It's going to make our first exploration of a labyrinth pretty easy. We got lucky finding a labyrinth map in the second room of a 20-room labyrinth. So, despite the prompt in our exploration phase saying flip 20 cards to see how long you're lost here, I don't think we're going to be lost all that long. This is playing to Sybil's strengths. This whole labyrinth, the second labyrinth we've been in, is also kind of gears and mechanical, so it's something that she is very good at. Let's go ahead. Now we can just pick and choose the fun ones we want to do and just decide how many resources we're going to get for that. This is awesome. So if we were just going to proceed through the next 2 rooms, it would be another hazard room followed by a locked door that we wouldn't be able to get through without a key. But luckily for us, we just found the labyrinth map. So I think that we're actually going to say that Sybil and the ice rookling go into the next room knowing it's going to be a hazard, knowing it's going to be a trap. And they cleverly bypass it with the rookling's ice powers and Sybil's arm dismantling a major component of the walls closing in trap. And in doing so, they also realize that if this is a trap room that needed to be reset, or if it ever needed to be worked on from whatever kind of mechanical contraption is controlling the trap, then there's probably a back door where people can do maintenance. So Sybil finds that and easily bypasses the locked door. So the next 2 rooms, super easy. Then we get to the room here where it's our first intersection of my labyrinth that I made, and it is the 7 of spades, which says rigged treasure chest. Draw a card. If it's red, the mechanism hurts you. Take a wound, then draw an item. Okay, I'm going to do that because even if we have a map, we don't know about rigged treasure chest. It probably wouldn't have a note on it like that. So let's flip a card. It is the 5 of spades, so it is not a red card, so we do not take a wound. I think that even knowing anything about this, I think Sybil is the cautious type when it comes to this stuff. And she opens it up and is going to get a 10 of diamonds for an item. Another labyrinth map. Interesting. Okay, so we find a second one. That's fine. Maybe this one has a little bit more information on it. Maybe something about the Guardian, because we're going to know a little bit more. But now I think we have 2 options. I do think that Sybil wants to go after the Guardian. Maybe that's what this second map actually says. Ooh, there's a discrepancy between the 2 maps. One of them is clearly older, and one of them is newer and has some information displayed on it that she just can't help but follow up. And also, it sounds like this is the direction that the rookling is going. So we're going to go north on our map, for lack of a better directional term here, and it is an ace, which we've had before, so another treasure chest here. These labyrinths are full of just... I don't think these are treasure chests in the traditional, like, Zelda dungeon sense. I'm imagining them more like caches or work benches, right? Like, these are... if this... the look of this labyrinth is another type of mechanical labyrinth that is providing a service or doing something for the dungeons to work the way they do, then I think that these are maybe panels, right? Like electrical panels, for lack of a better term. Obviously, there's no electricity down here, but some kind of... the way that Sybil is getting things from here is not, ooh, treasure chest. I think Sybil is like, oh, interesting, the way that they built this. I'm going to take notes on this, and also I'm going to take this tool or what have you. So we flip our item card for the second ace and get an 8, which says, ooh, a defense potion. That's a good one. Single use, increase your combat card values by 2. Ooh, I like that a lot. I'm going to keep that one off to the side so I remember I have that for the upcoming fight against the Guardian. The next room is a 4, which says flooded area exploration score of 3 to get around it. I feel like we gotta take the challenge, right? I feel like there's no way to sneak around, especially if you could see my map. It is the room directly at the end of one of the corridors. There's no way we would be able to skip it. It is a T intersection, and this is the spot between two hallways, so I think that we're just going to go for it. We're going to do an exploration obstacle here. The way that this works is, like I said before, we're going to use our exploration score of 3 to attempt to overcome this exploration obstacle, which is also a challenge rating of 3, so we need to win 2 out of these 3 cards. I'm going to flip our 3 cards first, a Jack of Hearts, a Jack of Diamonds, and a 9 of Hearts. Ooh, I'm feeling very confident going into this challenge. Against the 3 challenge cards, one is an Ace, easily overcome by our 9. The next one is a 3, easily overcome by a Jack. And then a King, so it does get a little dicey at the end, but our Rookling friend, I think, saves us with their ice magic, and we are able to explore through this flooded area, which maybe was flooded on purpose, or maybe is another unfortunate side effect of our making a mess of the cistern when we explored it. But that gets us to the Guardian Room. And I think this is where our electric rook has gone to for some reason. All right. Remember, the Guardian Room was a 5 of clubs, which, referring to the Guardian table in the labyrinth tables, is, ooh, I probably should have looked at this, a snake rook. A coiled telescopic rook with no limbs and a combat score of 4. Ooh, very cool. And you know what? We're giving it a rattler. We're giving it a rattle like a rattlesnake. And I think that the movement of this snake-like rook and the rattle of it sounded maybe enough like some kind of electrical field, right? Like just the echoes of that rattle sounded like something that maybe our electric rookling thought sounded like what it could do. And it has found its way here. And when Sybil finally catches up at a dead end here at the end of one of these tunnels of this labyrinth, they see this tiny little electric rookling, and it has created a spherical electrical defense bubble around it as it is kind of rolling away from being swatted by the tail of this giant coiled serpent rook. And she just looks down at the ice one and just says, I don't care if you don't like him. I'm not going to let that little thing get beat up. You're either going to help me or stay out of my way. And the ice rookling just nods its little head and holds up its big icy hands. And she says, good, let's do this. Now, normally this is where we would flip for its magic type, its attack type, its body type, etc. But that's kind of inferred from the snake rook description. It's got its combat score of 4. I'm not even going to flip for its reward because it will be a separate one from the labyrinth tables. So instead, we're just going straight into combat, and we are going to draw our 4 cards that we will have access to in this combat. And I think I'm going to take that defense potion, increasing all of them by 2, just to be safe. We got a 10 of clubs, a 9 of diamonds, a 3 of clubs, and a 4 of diamonds. All right. I am confident in my having taken that defense potion. I think we see Sybil quaff it down as she stands before, and this enormous snake-like rook kind of rears up its serpent-like head and stares down at Sybil and the little ice rookling that have come to defend their little electric friend who wandered into the wrong rook nest. All right. All of these are going to get +2, and I'm not sure how that works with the 10 and 9 turning into, I guess, 12 and 11, the equivalent of a queen and a jack. So yeah, we're going to go with that. All right. It has a combat score of 4, so we'll flip the first card for the snake-like rook, and it is a 6 of spades. This is an unarmed attack by the snake, so I think that it lunges at us to attempt to bite. It has some huge stone teeth, these sharp stones that just line its strange rook mouth opening here, and we're going to have to use our 9 of diamonds against that. Diamonds are, of course, creative attacks. So I think that what happens here is Sybil is actually going to distract it. I think Sybil and the ice rookling split up. The snake lunges towards Sybil, the larger prey, as she runs across the floor of this labyrinth room, and she gets close enough to the little scared electric rookling to reach out with her arm, and it's gonna zap and hurt for a second, but she actually smacks it like a ball, like a hockey shot, right into the mouth of this rook, which seems counterintuitive. That is what we're trying to prevent from happening. But its defense electric shield goes into the rook's mouth and zaps it. And this thing spits it out, and it lands on the ground, and I think that its electric field kind of disperses from the shock, and she looks and goes, "Good, pay attention. We're getting out of here. What were you thinking?" That is going to be our first success in this combat. Let's see what the next move by the snake is. A 3 of hearts, so that is normally a magical attack. However, we didn't even roll to see if this thing has magic. I'm going to say that it is its tail, and it rears up after having bit that electric rookling, and whether or not that sent any kind of coursing, strange sensations through its enormous snake rook body, it is going to rattle, and we're going to say that this is doing something that maybe this is luring the electric rookling. Ooh, in the first place, that's why it's here. And I think the rookling, instead of looking at Sybil and nodding to yeah, we're going to get out of here, looks at the snake again and just kind of like Ka in the Jungle Book. Is that the snake's name? I think it is. Anyway, swirly eyes, and it just begins slowly walking towards this rook, and Sybil's like, "What are you doing?" We're going to use our 3 of clubs, which with our defense potion of +2 makes it a 5. Clubs are weapon attacks. And I totally forgot about some of the amazing items we got in the last episode in the Cistern. Sybil has a weapon known as the Rook Scythe, which adds +3 to club cards for weapon attacks. And I think that she is going to grab it and say, "Oh, well, let's see if this thing works." She's going to run forward. This went from a 3 of clubs to a 6-8 of clubs as she rushes towards the ice rookling and says, "Watch it!" And the ice rookling creates a slick of ice that she slides up towards the rattling tail of this snake rook, and she takes the rook scythe to it and just slices its tail right off. It falls to the ground in a loud clatter of stone, and we've already won 2 of the 4 bouts of this combat. The next card for this snake is a 9 of clubs, which is a weapon attack, and I think again this is going to be its jaws, or actually maybe the rest of its body coils around Sybil and the ice rookling that have kind of flanked it away from its potential meal of this electric rookling. And we have a 10 of clubs, which turns into, with the +2 from the defense potion and the +3 from the rook scythe, nothing will beat this card. She begins to feel the squeeze of this snake as it is constricting Sybil and the ice rookling, but she gets her hand up and pushes the actual rook scythe up to be grabbed by her arm. Her physical human arms are pushing against the snake's coiling stone body, but her arm hefts this rook scythe and just buries it deep into one of the segments of the stone. Again, if you think of it, a rook in the form of a snake would need many, many circles of stones, almost like washers made of stone, and they'd be connected by some kind of mechanism. And I think that her arm just jams it right in between a couple of these and just dislocates integral part that is holding this rook snake together. And as it begins flailing from the shock of what is happening in this moment, it begins just flinging off circles of this stone. It is making a mess of the room of this labyrinth. And the last card that we will flip for it is the 7 of hearts, which will beat our 4 of diamonds +2, but it is not enough. We will take a wound from this, as I think how that manifests is, as it's magical, the rattle is continuing to rattle after having been separated from the major body of the snake rook. And as this thing is just flinging its stone pieces, its segments all around the place, in one last desperate act, it kind of just raises itself up, straight up, and then falls apart, which creates a cascade of stone that does land on Sybil and the rooklings a little bit. We are going to reduce our combat score by 1 until we can rest and recover that. And I think that that takes the form of maybe Sybil's arm got bent in a funny way, and it not only kind of tweaked her back where it's attached, but she's going to need to do some maintenance on it. But we have defeated the Snake Rook Guardian of this labyrinth, and we can claim not only our reward, but I'm going to continue doing what the Discord recommended with the optional job packs for Inventor, and I'm going to take one component here. I think that we maybe did a little too much damage to harvest much, but let's see what our reward and what our component is. Flipping on the rewards table from the labyrinth tables, we got a King of Diamonds. Ooh, that is going to be 10 labyrinth treasures. Oh boy. Those are the unique cups, rings, shards, and keys. So let's go ahead and flip 10 cards to see what we get there. I'm just going to tell you at the end if any of them are special. And ooh, are there. Of 10 cards, we got 3 face cards, which means rare, unique versions of these treasures. We ended up with 2 regular cups, 1 regular ring, 2 regular keys, and 2 regular shards, but we got a Jack of Hearts, a Jack of Spades, and a Queen of Clubs. So those correspond to... The Goblet of Valor says that if we drink it before a combat, we get to add 2 to every heart card drawn in combat for 1 combat phase. So that would be really good if we were a magic user, like a Helmed or a Rookling followed class, but it's not the best for our armed, but we can sell this for pretty good treasure. And then we got the Jack of Spades, which is a rare shard. This is our first shard, and it is the Seeking Shard. For every spade drawn in general exploration of the dungeons outside of labyrinths, you find an additional shard, which is just something we can trade if we ever get to a city for plenty of money to buy new things. And then lastly, we found a rare key, the Rookstone key. Oh, this is perfect for Sybil. Oh my gosh. Add an additional locked room to the next labyrinth you enter, in any position you choose. This key unlocks that door, and within you will find a unique Rookstone of your own choice. That alone, that made everything worth it. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. So slowing down and zooming back into narrative time. Sybil has pulled herself up out of the rubble that is this Snake Rook's den here. And the 2 rooklings are accounted for, and despite some confusion, the electric rookling is fine, the ice rookling is fine, and if anything, this encounter has brought the 2 closer, and they're not messing with each other as much. Sybil takes a little bit of time to go through the rubble and see if she can find anything of note. I forgot to mention the component I found for the inventor, which is a switch. So we can turn things on and off or flow to different positions, etc. So that's very cool. And in combing through all of these things, she finds rings and shards, and a lot of these were working as inner workings of the snake. The goblet, I think, maybe is just something that she finds. I think the shard was maybe wedged in this Snake Rook's eye, and she takes a look at it and holds it and thinks about it for a second. And it almost has like a magnetic pull towards other shards, which helps her find the other 2. But this one seems to find regular shards. And then lastly, I think she tries to dig towards like the core mechanism of this snake that had it coiling and kind of just rotating in strange serpentine ways. And what she finds is maybe it is this switch that can only be turned on and off if a key is in place and turned, and she finds a key. And when she pulls it out, I think the mechanism just kind of dissolves, like rock turned to just sand. And she holds onto it because in the keyhole, or some kind of detail on the actual body of the key is something that reminds her, and her hand immediately goes to the Whisper Stone that she found in the cistern, of rookstones. And she feels like this is important, but she doesn't know why. And now the rest of this labyrinth may be relatively uneventful, but let's just, for fun, go through. This is a big one with 20 cards. I think this is the biggest labyrinth you can draw in the exploration tables. So let's just pick some of the fun ones and see what we find. I think Sybil is riding a high as she, despite being lost in this labyrinth that the tiny electric rookling wandered into and got them lost within, it was worth it for this key and the things that she has found. And between the three of them, they can consult these maps and use their abilities to find their way through pretty easily. Here's the highlights of the rest of the rooms. In a secret compartment next to the Guardian's chambers in that same hallway, Sybil recognizes some familiar gears and mechanisms that are familiar to her only because she got to see the inner workings of the snake rook itself. And in doing some quick tinkering and just messing around with the contraptions on the wall, she finds a secret compartment. This required us to overcome an exploration challenge of 3, which we did, and it helped us find another item, which is a King of Spades. Under items says, whoa, a potent throwing potion. For use against combat opponents, it reduces all of their combat card values by 4, single use. That is huge. After which, Sybil backtracked a little bit through the labyrinth, ways that she has come, marked on her map. She has a second map as well, which she can sell to anybody if she finds them down here or back up on the surface, and begins backtracking until she finds she has entered a strange room that is like a garden full of lichen. We had to flip 3 cards. If they were all the same color, we would have been infected with rook rot. Luckily, we did not flip 3 cards of the same color, and Sybil can tell something about this lichen and the way that it is growing and seemingly glowing and harnessing inert rook pieces and pieces of machinery that she doesn't let the rooklings get close. Again, she likes to play like she doesn't care or she's about having to babysit these rooklings. And she said she hasn't grown attached, but it's happening, slowly but surely. And afterwards, I'm actually going to say there were multiple lichen rook cards to go through here, but thanks to the Whisper Stone Rookstone that Sybil has, we're not going to do one of those right yet. We're going to continue exploring. After the garden room, there was a section where this lichen seems to have grown so heavily on things that a giant portion of the floor just collapsed, and all that was left was a thin bridge crossing an abyss here in the dungeons. One of the rooklings knocks a small pebble off of this narrow bridge, and it falls for far too long before any faint sound of an echo comes back up. However, after traversing that narrow bridge over a chasm, we come across an NPC. And this is the first person we've met down here in the dungeons, and I want to give them a little bit of spotlight. Let's use the NPC generator oracles from the Roomlands book and see who it is we are about to meet. We flip 3 cards to build an NPC, and you're going to get a name, a look, and a characteristic. So this character's name is 2, Torug. Their look is Queen of Hearts, injured, ooh, very fitting, stranded in a labyrinth, okay. And their characteristic is that they are a joker, always quipping. Oh, this is a wonderful character. Torug is an injured but optimistic person down here in the labyrinths, and he's about to meet Sybil and 2 rooklings. As Sybil and the 2 rooklings round a corner, they come across another collapsed section of this labyrinth, and I think they see a man standing there. He's much younger than Sybil. I want to say he's in his mid to late 20s. Clearly some kind of scout for a nearby settlement because he has a pack on his back and is outfitted for short-term travel. And we see him sitting on a bunch of the rubble, and he goes, "All right, Torog, 15th time's the charm. Here we go. Ready?" And he tries to stand up, and he's like, "Oh!" And you see him collapse down on his leg, and he goes, "Nope, can't put weight on it. Come on. Oh, they're gonna make fun of me so bad when I get back. Oh my goodness. All right. Now this collapsed. Where is it? I think I came from that way." And when he looks back the other way down the hallway, he sees Sybil and the 2 rooklings, and he's like, "Whoa! I did not expect to see anybody down here, and never mind. Wait a second. Who are you?" He looks Sybil up and down and kind of scans her clothing for something that she looks down all of a sudden a little self-conscious, and she says, "What do you mean? Hi, I'm Sybil. I fell in from the surface, I don't know, a day ago? How long do you think?" And she looks at one of the rooklings and it just shrugs, and she says, "Yeah, it's probably been a little over a day, and I've just been lost and wandering. You're the first person I've seen down here." And he says, "You're not from one of the clans? You're not from Oubliette? You're surviving down here?" And Sybil kind of looks at the 2 rooklings and says, "In a sense, we're doing okay. Certainly could be doing a lot better. Do you need help?" And he says, Yeah, I could use a hand." And he looks up and goes, "Or an arm. Am I right? You have an arm on your..." And Sybil does not laugh. She just looks and goes, "Great. 2 rooklings and a joker. That's exactly what I need down here." And she reaches down and gives him a hand, lifts him up, and sees that he's injured, and she says, "I have some things for that. Hold on a second." It actually says here that if you can spare an item, you can draw an item. So I think that we'll give him our map because he seemed lost. We have a second copy of a map. We can flip a second card for an item that he may give us, which is a 6 of spades, which would give us a treasure. So actually, you know what? That's fitting. If Torog is from the city of Oubliette down here in the dungeons, and he is surprised that Sybil is not affiliated, let's go ahead and flip a card, and it's just going to be one of the 4 suits, and it will determine which clan of Oubliette that Torog is a member of. The 9 of diamonds means that he is a member of the clan of rings. And I don't know what that means. I've not read a whole lot about Oubliette. I kind of wanted to discover it as we find it, but I think that this is going to be how we find Oubliette. Sybil is going to have to just give him a shoulder to lean on, and the 4 people here now are going to leave this labyrinth. The rest of the rooms were relatively simple, and I think that also Torog is probably impressed at not only Sybil's use of the map that she found in navigating this labyrinth, but also the Whisper Stone makes her silent. That's why he did not notice her coming up on him at all, and as they continue to make their way through the last few rooms of this labyrinth, they maybe were going to run into a lichen rook or something like that, and Torog got really nervous because he's injured, he can't really help at the moment, and instead he is surprised because the teamwork of Sybil and these 2 rooklings makes it so that way they were very good at avoiding problems in this labyrinth, and clearly he was not. So he's probably not excited to bring her to Oubliette, but because he's going to be going back with an injured leg and somebody who bailed him out. But at the same time, she seems capable. Someone surviving down here without the help of a network like the city of Oubliette. So I think that's where we're going to end this episode, as Sybil and the 2 rooklings help Torog, member of the clan of rings in the city of Oubliette, wander out of the labyrinth that he came in the opposite entrance of, as they make their way towards a city that he explains to Sybil lies not far off in the distance, in the heart of the dungeons, the legendary Hanging City of Oubliette. As always, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you were enjoying this podcast and the stories that I'm telling through games. If you do, find me on the social medias so we can talk about games that may be on your radar. You can see updates about games that I'm getting. Let me know things that you'd like to hear me play or anything like that. My social media is pretty boring and straightforward. I don't get into a lot of discourse. I am on plenty of Discords, however, and if you want to talk to me more directly, you should join the DMs After Dark Discord, which will be linked in the description of this video. You could always also email me at reneplaysgamespod@gmail.com and let me know if there's games that you want to hear me play or talk about or anything like that. Books you want me to read, please do. And if you want to be on an episode of Perspective Checks, I'm already booking into next year, but that's going to come way faster than we realize because it's already October. Other than that, rate and review if you haven't already. It just helps more nerds find my podcast on their apps that they're using. And if you feel absurdly generous, I do have a Ko-fi page where you can set up one-time or recurring donations to help cover the cost of podcast hosting and the video software I use for interviews and transcriptions. So until next time, unlike our electric friend, if you hear a rattle, skedaddle.